Well, coming up on today's show, Tesla's Q3 2018 vehicle production and delivery numbers. Renault expands their plug-in range. More ditch diesel from big car makers. And the Jaguar E-Trophy holds its first test. Well, good morning, good afternoon and good evening wherever you are in the world. Welcome to EV News Daily. It's Wednesday, the 3rd of October 2018. It's Martyn Lee here, and I've been through every EV story today, so you don't have to. And what a day it's been, so busy. And a lot of stuff I just won't get a chance to report on today. Maybe we'll save it for later in the week. Thank you to myev.com. They are the guys that help make this show. They are also those that have built the first marketplace specifically for electric vehicles. Totally free, buying, selling, learning, researching. It's all good for that. So if you have a used EV or you would like one in North America, then check out myev.com. Today is a crazy day for EV news. We have Tesla production numbers, delivery numbers on one hand. We've got the Paris Motor Show on another. Both really important. I'll start with Tesla as arguably, here's my logic, maybe flawed, if it wasn't for Tesla, all the others wouldn't be doing what they are doing today. So I know that's a contentious argument, but let's have that debate on a different day. We'll start with Tesla's Q3 2018 vehicle production and deliveries. To quote a pun, which has been slightly overused, but I still like it, Model 3 production has been intense. Get it? Intense? Alright, it's a dad joke. I'll carry on. In Q3, say Tesla, and this is from their investor relations portal, in Q3, we produced 80,142 vehicles, 50% more than our prior all-time high in Q2, including, and here's the numbers, 53,239 Model 3 vehicles. That's double the volume of Q2. During Q3, we transitioned Model 3 production from entirely rear-wheel drive at the beginning of the quarter to almost entirely dual motor during the last few weeks of the quarter. This added significant complexity, but we successfully executed this transition and ultimately produced more dual motor than rear-wheel drive cars in Q3. In the last week of the quarter, we produced over 5,300 Model 3 vehicles, all of which were dual motor, meaning we achieved a production rate of more than 10,000 drive units per week. So that is the news I reported on earlier in the week on the podcast. Over 10,000 drive units now being installed in Model 3s every single week. And, of course, a whole week of nothing but dual motor Model 3s. And as people have been noting today, the financial side of that, it means that the average selling price, the ASP of Model 3, goes up when they sell a dual motor. How about the legacy cars, if we can call them that? They still sell very well. Here we go. 26,903 Model S and X vehicles, which was higher than Q2. Q3 deliveries totaled 83,500 vehicles in total. So, 55,840 Model 3s were delivered, slightly higher than produced. 14,470 Model S's, 13,190 Model X's. So you'll notice a difference between the production and the deliveries, and we'll get to that in a moment. To put that into perspective, though, in Q3, Tesla delivered more than 80% of the vehicles, they say, that we delivered in all of 2017. Think about people going to work every single day last year. All the amazing work Tesla did in the whole of 2017, in just this 3-month period, delivered more than 80% of the entire vehicle output of an entire year. Twice as many Model 3s as they did in all previous quarters combined. Well, they say that Tesla continues to lack access to cash incentives available to locally produced electric vehicles in China, the huge market of China, that are typically around 15% of the selling price or more. Taking ocean transport costs and import tariffs into account, Tesla is now operating at a 55% to 60% cost disadvantage compared to exactly the same car if it were to be made in China. That's a problem. But they have a solution, given that China is by far the largest market for EVs. To address this issue, says Tesla, we are accelerating construction of our Shanghai factory, which we expect to be a capital-efficient and rapid build-out, using many lessons learned from the Model 3 ramp in North America. And of course, I should add, by the way, if you didn't know, all future Gigafactories, so that would be Giga 3 in China, the battery production and car production all under one roof. The current situation where you've got batteries being made in Nevada, cars being made in Fremont, they said that's the only time that's going to happen. All future Gigas are going to be under one roof. With production stabilised, they say, delivery and outbound vehicle logistics were our main challenges during Q3. We made many improvements to these processes throughout the quarter and plan to make further improvements in Q4 so we can scale successfully. I'll put a link to the investor relations link on the show notes if you want to go and check out the full release for yourself. The team at Inside EVs have had a look at the monthly Model 3s, and of course Tesla don't break them down, but Inside EVs are normally pretty good, actually, pretty accurate with guesstimating. They say May was 6,000 model... This is sales. May was 6,000 Model 3 sales. June was 6,000 Model 3 sales. July, 14,250. August, 17,800. September, 22,250. Massively impressive, isn't it? Well, year to date for the Model 3, 78,000 of them have been made. That's on track to beat 100,000 of them for the year. And remember, this is North America only, and a few in Canada. In fact, I've got some insight from somebody who was helping deliver them, hand over, that whole process over the last couple of weekends, who has a friend who has messaged me, and I won't get to that today because it's been a crazy busy day for other news, but it's some insight I want to bring you. Well, a couple of my favourite comments that I was just looking through the comment section on various places today. This one said that Tesla's looking at being the 13th biggest brand for the entire month in the US. That's way ahead of BMW, Mercedes, Mazda. They'll be just ahead of Lexus, behind VW and Dodge before the year is over. I think we'll have a month where they overtake both of those, says this one comment. And a commenter simply known as Henry said this: in August, Model 3 outsold the entire lineup of BMW and Mercedes-Benz. The September number probably comes close to the entire vehicle sales for Mercedes-Benz, cars and SUVs, and a few thousand shy of all BMWs. Well, let's move on to another car that's hotly anticipated, and it's the Kia e-Niro. Kia's revealed the European version of the Kia e-Niro. It's the electric version of the Niro, which you may have seen driving around if you've seen one of the combustion versions of those. It's at the 2018 Paris Motor Show. According to Autocar, the e-Niro is based on the existing crossover, with a few variations. Things like the grille is different. It's all sealed up, don't need any cooling for a big fossil sitting in the front of it. It's going to be sold with two variants, the 39.2 kilowatt hour battery pack, and that gives you 193 miles of range, and the 64 kilowatt hour version with 301 miles of range. 0 to 62 times 7.8 seconds. I think we can call that spirited, can't we? And as you've heard me say this before, it's all the speed you need. Okay, admittedly, 3-4 seconds for Model 3 is lovely, but for a person with average driving talents, anything from 6 to 8 seconds is all the speed you need. Now, the e-Niro was first previewed by Concept back in January. Slightly slower, 0 to 60, than the sister car that's also made by the Hyundai Motor Group that owns Kia, the Kona Electric. However, with an output of 201 brake horsepower, it is more powerful. So slightly different. It's not as if, I think there's a misconception maybe out there when you read some articles from people who have 2 and 2 equals 5. They presume that because it's the same company making them, they presume it's things like the same battery suppliers, exactly the same battery pack, same running gear, basically just a different badge on the front. That would be very wrong. Very different cars, very different size and shape. If you want to find out more about those two, I recommend Bjorn Nyland's videos. He did a hilarious one where he had a Hyundai and a Kia, the Kona and the e-Niro next to each other in a car park, and it was just him with one camera in his hand, and he was dashing between them going, let's look at the footwell, let's look at the steering wheel, let's look at the seats, was comparing them. Do you know what I mean? You've got to be a pretty hardcore EV fan to watch that, but it was really funny, and he presented it in a kind of really fantastically charming way that he always does. So go and check that out. He did a big e-Niro series of videos. Let's move on to Renault, and the Paris Motor Show has been going on. The first big announcement from Renault is the KZE that I mentioned yesterday. It's set for China. It's a concept at the moment, but it's set for China next year in 2019. Looks like, and basically, if I'm describing this, it looks like the typical SUV that you can imagine, right? SUV proportions, but it's been put in a hot wash and it's shrunk. Europe's going to get it from 2021. No word on the US. I don't imagine it'll be a good seller in the US because it'll be a tiny car. And I think in the USA, you like slightly bigger cars than this. Well, Carlos Ghosn, the chairman and CEO of Group Group Renault said that the Renault-Nissan-Mitsubishi alliance was a pioneer in the European leader in electric vehicles. We are introducing the Renault KZE, an affordable, urban, SUV-inspired electric model, combining the best of Group Renault, our leadership in EV, our expertise in affordable vehicles, and in forging strong partnerships, end quote. And normally you see these quotes from industry people or car people, and a lot of it's guff, right? A lot of it's PR guff. But actually, when you look at what he said there, they do lead in EVs. They have got expertise in affordable vehicles. They have got strong partnerships between all the companies they work for. And so there was no BS there. In China, a joint venture with Dongfeng is responsible for building it for the Chinese market. The specs are pretty good when you compare it to the other small EVs that are bombing around Chinese cities right now. Range of 150 miles. I imagine the build quality will be better than some of those Chinese cars that, let's face it, leave a little bit to be desired. The battery deg on them, it can be pretty bad. Actually, some of the batteries that are being used in those cheap Chinese EVs, not all of them, but some of them, the battery deg is so bad that by the time you finish using the car, it really isn't that good for second life, just recycling. Can't really sell them on. Some of them are fine, by the way, but this is going to probably raise the standards of the really small little city urban EVs that are sold in China. Carlos Ghosn also elaborated on their plans for more electrified cars. From 2020, Renault is going to start to bring to Europe 3 more cars with plugs. Great! Albeit hybrids, but they're plug-in hybrids. The Clio, the Megane, and the Capture. And things like the Clio and the Megane are very popular cars, big segments cars. And adding a plug to them is fantastic news. Well, Grégoire Genet is Renault's powertrain product manager. And Grégoire said this, I quote, "The best marketing strategy is to have this technology on our best-selling cars." And end quote. So rather than just talking a good game, they're going to put their money where their mouth is, put EV technology into those cars that sell very well, but make sure they have plugs. Well, the Clio, the Capture and the Megane are going to be launched in Europe in 2020, just in time, conveniently, to help Renault meet the new EU fleet emissions standard, which is a reminder, 95 grams per kilometre that start to take effect in 2020 here in Europe, and its car manufacturers are now going to be measured on their fleet grams per kilometre. So, if you exceed that, you are charged in, I think it's bands. I'm not sure whether the bands are 5 or 10, but it's per car sold. So for those companies that sell a lot of cars, the fines would be ridiculous if you can't bring down your fleet emissions. So that's why for every massive SUV that they sell, which has got a big profit margin, they might need to take a loss or sell at cost or whatever, an EV, just to equalise their fleet emissions. Does that make sense? Good. Yes. Right. Okay, moving on to the Model 3. Again in Paris, as I've previously reported, a page on the official Paris Motor Show website had Tesla as a partner of the show, and confirming that the Model 3 is making an official appearance following its Goodwood showing earlier this year. Well, technically, it's making its appearance twice. There's 2 Model 3s on display at the Paris Motor Show, and the queues that I saw at Goodwood were replicated today in Paris. As cars like the BMW 3 Series were being unveiled, there was a queue to see the Model 3. And let me remind you that today was press day. These are journalists. These are cynical journalists, cynical automotive journalists, queuing up to see the Model 3 in the flesh, in the metal, in person. What does that tell you? Well, from Matthias Schmidt, who I follow on Twitter, he is an automotive consultant and analyst, and I highly recommend following him for the numbers of all this. He is at @auto_Schmidt. Matthias says this: German diesel mix of new car registrations dipped below 30% in September. 3 years after Dieselgate, the anniversary is only not so long ago, the petrol mix is 64%. The last time annual diesel sales in Germany was this low, 1999. Unavailability of many models because of the new way of measuring things here in Europe, WLTP, the standard, like in America, that would be the EPA, in September, could have heavily impacted any diesels that weren't cleared for sale. So a drop-off of diesel. Next, Bentley. Almost before it began, Bentley's Bentayga diesel has officially been dropped from Western European markets, reports Evo magazine. The move follows Porsche in removing the engine type from its range after little more than a year on sale. Bentley is going to prioritise hybrid cars, its first model being the Bentayga plug-in, goes on sale next year, and Bentley denied the news that it has anything to do with the WLTP requirements, which have been recently responsible for several of Volkswagen Group's cars, for instance, being temporarily removed from sale. Well, next, it's the turn of Renault, who are ditching diesel. The CEO, who we mentioned earlier, Carlos Ghosn, had this to say at the Paris Motor Show. The diesel powertrain that Renault offers is being cut in the coming years because of tightening emissions standards. He said, and I quote, "We are obviously headed for the end of diesel. It's the end of the game. Consumers say, why would I buy a diesel when I'll be trapped in 3 or 4 years down the road with a car they cannot sell?" And that is Carlos Ghosn, one of the most important figures in the automotive industry. Let me read you that quote again. "We are obviously headed for the end of diesel. It's the end of the game. Consumers will say, why should I buy a diesel when I'll be trapped in 3 or 4 years' time down the road with a car they cannot sell?" Interesting, eh? Well, moving on to the final couple of stories today. First of all, Mercedes, and then on to Jaguar. Well, I can see a pairing between EQ and AMG. Not my words, the words of Ola Källenius. I can see a pairing between EQ and AMG. Now, let me remind you, EQ is what Mercedes are calling their electric cars and hybrids as well. You've seen it on the side of Lewis Hamilton's winning Formula One car. EQ power, right? And then AMG, of course, their performance division. Mercedes board member Ola for research and development, he's the future CEO as well, was talking to Evo magazine. An AMG model based on the EQC is expected to continue to utilise the 80 kilowatt hour battery pack, but linked to a higher output electric motor to prioritise performance to the detriment of range. Expect a significant power hike over the standard model's 402 brake horsepower. In the more immediate future, Mercedes-Benz AMG's first push into the electrified end of the market will be a plug-in hybrid. The new technology is officially being called EQ Power Plus. And according to Källenius, the powertrain is like the KERS system, which is used for performance cars, believed to be a combination of the 4-litre V8 engine they have and a very powerful electric motor. The production of that will start 2020, they say. I'll put a link to that Evo article in the show notes. Final story today. Jaguar's completed the first official test for its I-Pace e-Trophy series, which is going to run on the Formula E support bill at 9 events, according to Alex. I was say Alex's name wrong. Alex Kalinaukas. Oh no, sorry Alex. He writes from motorsport.com. He says this is the first official launch running events and acclimatization test. The E-Trophy Championship manager Marion Barnaby was talking to motorsport.com. Now, according to motorsport.com, the guys that have actually allocated their drivers have come out and seen their cars for the first time, and they've driven the Jaguar I-Paces in anger. And they got used to the car. They ended Wednesday with a full race run, 25 minutes plus 1 lap, so the drivers can get into the mindset of a race weekend, feeling what the car moves like, what the tyres are like after a race distance, and building them up to get used to driving EVs. That motorsport.com article, full link in the show notes. It's a longer article. Go and read that. It's fascinating. Right, 2 things then to end on. Firstly, if you want to take part in the community section of this, we are after your comments on this week's question of the week, provided by myev.com. It's a simple question, but I'd like to know why you give the answer. Plug-in hybrid or pure EV? Which one should you buy, or which one did you buy? And what are the considerations behind that? Plug-in hybrid or pure EV? Secondly, a bit of housekeeping. Those who have listened to the last few episodes of the show, actually over the last couple of weeks, I've been saying that my wife finally said to me, you know what, I need to move to EV for her car, which is great because she drives an old diesel at the moment. It's a nice diesel, but it's a very nice Golf diesel, if I'm honest with you, but it's diesel, so we both agree it has to go. And over the last couple of weeks, I've been trying to find the car that she likes, settled on the Renault Zoe, and I've been talking to people who have been giving me amazing advice here in the UK. People who use things like the forums, like Speak EV, will know Will from DSG. They're in Morecambe in the north of England. He is Badger in Black is his username, his screen name, if you like. He's given me amazing advice. Also, Nick, and EV Nick, him and his dad have their own dealership as well. He's been giving great tips and advice, and I would love to have bought a car from either of them, actually. And I said to Will, right, what have you got and when can I buy it? And it just didn't work out that cars were coming in at the right time. So, delighted to say that my wife found one yesterday that she really liked. Funnily enough, that's about 4 miles away from where I'm recording this podcast. And I was prepared to drive hundreds of miles to get the right car. It's weird how things work out. So, I've paid a deposit on it now, and we pick it up. I don't know. Actually, I've got to go Friday to do the paperwork, possibly Saturday to go do the paperwork, and then it'll be another couple of days after that. She gets her Zoe. It's used. So it is the 22 kilowatt hour. It's almost 2 years old, and she's delighted. So she's utterly happy. She does probably like 20 miles a day for her job. We'll charge it overnight every night. Perfect use case of why carry around more battery than you really need? So, for those that have said to me, oh, what's the latest? That's the latest. Finally bought one. Deposit paid today, and we're ready to go. Here's a question. Do you think I should tell the dealer when we go down there to get it that we do this podcast and that I know one or two things about EVs? Because when I spoke to him today to give him my card details to pay the deposit, he was like, oh, I forgot to tell you, it's on a battery lease. Let me tell you about the battery lease. I was like, I just stopped you there. I know all about the battery lease. It's fine. I think he was a little bit confused because I guess most people they sell to would be like, oh, what's a battery? How much is it going to cost? I'm not so sure. And I was like, yep, I know, it's fine. £49 a year. She does 3,000 miles a year. It's fine. Let's do it. Let's go for it. Let me pay for the car now. Let's get it done. So do I tell him about this podcast or not? Should I just do it undercover, if you like, and then tell him afterwards? Or do you want me to film it and make some stuff for YouTube and let you know how the story goes? I don't mind doing it either way. I'm kind of 50-50 on it, so let me know your preference. Well, thank you very much for listening once again today. It means a lot. The 87 patrons of this podcast, whose generosity means that I get to make this show. Thank you very much. I think I'm getting used to Patreon now, getting my head around Patreon. So I think the last couple of days have been billing day. So if that has affected you and you had an email saying that you once again supported this podcast, thank you. That is not enough, just words, I know, but I'm doing my best and working my socks off for you. There's 253 previous episodes of the podcast to download in the places that you get podcasts from, and the blogs at evnewsdaily.com. And if you want to check us out on the socials, if you search for the podcast, we come top of all the search results. Have a wonderful day. I'll catch you tomorrow.